One page, 27 ads. 50,000 people will see these. Let's get it moving. You know, I really must try Lipton's tea.
Mon ami, you'll try anything that's in that paper, no?
Maman, Papa, come listen to this.
That's the plaything and the fad. But fate is to make radio a power in a world of peace.
They're singing about cereal?
Yes, ma'am.
Wow, things have moved on from my day.
What would you like for breakfast today?
Wheaties?
Come to the table, dear. It's breakfast time.
Dad, my show hasn't finished.
All my pals like fruit gums, Mum.
I'm gonna have this song stuck in my head for a decade.
This is more than music. This is moving image.
I just love those fruit gums, Mum.
When your mother's home, we're going straight to get some of those fruit gums.
Honey, I've got a surprise.
We're live in the next hour. Ready to make history?
Let's move some cursors.
What's that?
Well, click on it then.
This campaign is ready for the world.
And the world is gonna see it.
Let's move some minds.
The production of this film took 25 hours and 300 generations. That's all. If that's not times moving on, I don't know what is.
Intense. Cool.
All right. Hey, everyone. This is Anna and Brian from the Amata World podcast, and we have our next guest for the AI episode, Lucas Stanley, who is an AI creative at Jellyfish. Hey, Lucas. How are you?
Hello. Good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, great. Good to be back. I think, we've had a short little break while Anna was recovering. But yeah. Back to it. So, maybe we can start off. Can you introduce, tell us a little bit more about yourself, Lucas, and what you do?
Yeah, of course. So, I'm an AI creative. It's a bit of a strange title, I think, given how young AI is as a thing. But what AI creative is essentially something that comes in between, in the standard marketing process, the creative team and the production team. And what we try to do is work in a way where creative and production overlap. So they become a single process. And at the end of the creative process, you're at the end of the production process as well. And the reason for that is because AI is the first medium where the tools of ideation are the same as the tools of production. There's no difference between them. So there's no need to differentiate between those phases anymore. And I could talk for hours about why else we're doing that, but I'll stop for a second. My background is I started as a production assistant. I was in film for a few years, and then I was a cinematographer. I've worked with some really great brands. I've done work for Apple, I've done work for Google, which is, again, just really cool to be able to say. And I was a cinematographer for a few years, and then you probably saw it as well. OpenAI released a video from Sora, and it was this shot of a camera. It was a flying camera going over this white desert, kind of salt plain. And there was an astronaut with a red knitted hat on. And there was 3 consistent shots and then a spaceship at the end. And I saw it, and I sat at my kitchen table, and I just went, shit. Because, I was like, I have this whole idea of a future. I'm learning a craft. I've got really into the craft. I've got luckily into a position where I've got a solid career in this, and that's the end of that. That is a paradigm shift. The things that we sell, the things that fund our careers are no longer going to have the value that they used to, because there's a much cheaper alternative. And not only is there a cheaper alternative, but it looks cool as hell. It's like, it looks amazing. And I had a few days where I went, this is really, really rough. What am I going to do? I feel so scared. And then I thought, well, I might as well try it and have a play with it. And I had a play with it, and fast forward now, and I'm the creative AI lead for a really massive agency, and we're doing really cool stuff with it, and it's really good fun, and it has massive, terrifying, complicated moral downsides and upsides and massive ethical implications and giant creative questions, but we're at least facing those head on and doing some cool stuff with it.
Sorry if it might be a bit noisy because I'm in the startup hub today, but yeah, I'm kind of amazed of from your journey, and that you are not scared to use it. So you're trying to stay on ahead of this wave of with AI and new technologies. But I was wondering, what was the first project that you actually did with AI, and maybe can you tell a bit more about what kind of different hooks you see actually for your will be useful for your background to use in with AI?
What kind of hooks did you?
So hooks or something why you're passionate about that, and just so you mentioned about the video that you saw,
yeah.
And I was oh yeah, that's actually really cool, and yeah, it doesn't take a long time to produce it compared to the real life actors and the CGI.
So the first thing I made with it was what was it? Loads of little playy things. So the general conventional wisdom of AI stuff at the moment is that you've got text, which is up ahead and doing the most cutting edge stuff. You've got image generation, which is usually half a year behind that, and you've got video, which is another half a year behind that. And usually you see things that are achieved within LLMs, achieved in imagery a few months later, and so forth. And that is going forward so fast. So you use the phrase stay ahead of it. Half my job is just keeping track of what the fuck is going on. And every day you wake up and there's 1,000 new models, and they're all good at different things. And then they all have the marketing hype around them as well. And there's a million people on LinkedIn that are this is going to change the game. Production, you're dead. It's over, or whatever that thing is that they'll use to describe it. And you've got to see through all of that and figure out what is actually useful here, what isn't, all of that stuff. So that's a large portion of my job, is just staying up to date. And there's a lot of play involved in that, which is a really lovely thing. I was always someone, even when I was a cinematographer, I'd do these talks where I would talk about the theory behind it was that when you see trends on social media, they're led by technology. So, having a wide angle camera on iPhones as a popular thing leads to that trend where you put the iPhone over your head like that, and you get a really wide angle of your face and the scenario around, or etc. You see tech or filters might lead to a new trend, or whatever it is. You see tech-enabled trends. So the idea of these talks was to sort of say, right, here's the tech, creative people, what's the trend going to be? So it was really fun to figure out, that's the same thought process. What does that technology then enable over and over again? It's just in AI, it's every week, there's a new thing. So yeah, the first thing that I made was one when Runway released Gen 3, which was, I think, a year and a half ago. I'd made a lot of stuff and played around with a lot of stuff before that. But when they released Gen 3, it's interesting in the marketing world, right? We have actual clients that we need to make stuff for, and those clients need to be protected from liability, be protected also from public outrage or annoyance at the use of AI. It's a really hot button topic. So actually, for a lot of agencies, even the most forward-looking ones, there's a lot of hesitation to run with technology because of the potential ramifications of that. So the result of that is a lot of the time I work in a kind of spec space. And then if the client buys in, we then go, right, here's how we actually do it. So I made this spec ad for eBay. And it was, I still absolutely love the idea. It was pure play with AI. And I just had this idea of this shot, and it was a slow push forward on a really wide lens, diffuse lighting, this drawer opens in front of the camera, and we go in, and inside is this world of all the technology that's been forgotten. So like all of us, it came from this insight that 80% of us have old technology in a drawer somewhere in our house. So I was like, what is the world of that technology? Like it's been forgotten in this drawer. What is the society this technology has built in this drawer? And let's show that and then develop from there. And as I was doing it, I just could not make the drawer open. Like there are things in AI that you just can't, you run at them again and again and again, use a million different prompts, and how to prompt effectively is an entire world, and we could probably do an episode on that. But ran at it so many times, I got to about 300 iterations and just went, I can't do it. I give up. So instead I was like, well, I'll just start inside the drawer instead, and let's play around inside the drawer. And ended up with this ad, which it was set to What About Us by Pink. If you know that song, and you'll probably now have it stuck in your head for the rest of it. And I can send you the ad afterwards if you want to put it in here to show. But you're flying towards this cupboard, and then you cut inside, and it's the better one is the clothes episodes because of variants. So it's all of these clothes just dancing to What About Us, and then you cut outside of the cupboard, and the music goes away, and it's find your old clothes, a new home, eBay. So just a really sweet little story.
Down the river too far. What about us? What about all the times you said you had the answers? What about us? What about all the broken happy ever after? What about us? What about all the plans that ended in disaster? What about love? What about love? What about us?
But it was in the nascent days of AI. It was very much what's the best thing you can do with this? And one of the ways that you could be really successful in AI at the start was to find a thing that worked, because so much didn't work. Find a thing that worked. These dancing clothes really worked. Figure out the prompts that trigger them, and then do something that involves a montage of that. So this was a montage of all these different clothes. And once I had that like shit hot prompt for this one thing that happened, I was like, right, build out from there to get something that feels good. And so a lot of the world, going back to that initial thing I was saying of what AI creative is, you're between production and creative, and you're always working really hard in R&D. We do loads of work, as I was saying earlier, for Google, for Adidas, which is like really involved, and we want to do this specific thing, and it's really hard to figure out how to do that. On the other end, you've got like creatives who are like, we want to do something, and we don't want to flex that idea. And in our world, you're constantly flexing the two back and forth to get to something that delivers that idea, but is also possible with production on the other side. And that's why we then integrate those two processes into one to get the best of both.
Nice. I mean, I'd like to dig into that a little bit more. So right now with your current role in Jellyfish, you're working kind of, like you said, in between the creative and then the production. Like, what is the sort of process like right now to sort of be that person in the middle trying to mediate between? Because obviously, there's a lot of controversy related to anything that's AI generated. Like, how do you balance that with sort of your clients' needs and, the specs you need to produce?
It's a constant and very complicated thing. It's also changing every 3 seconds. There are some very big advantages to being at Jellyfish and in the brand tech group for us. One of them is that brand tech group, which is the group with which Jellyfish is a part, also own a platform called Pencil. And Pencil are, I'm going to sound really like I'm towing the company line here, but they're actually great. So what they do, an aggregator of models, and you can make an ad from end to end using AI models within Pencil. It will also review how good those adverts are. And they've also had like over $1 billion of spend through the platform, which means that they know how something's going to perform compared to how much it costs. So what that means is Pencil negotiates a lot of the agreements with like the major models. So Pencil, what would negotiate an agreement with Google to use VO3, then negotiate an agreement with Runway to use Gen 4 or whatever it is. And all of those models we can then utilize through Pencil. And we know that we're covered in terms of liability, that we're covered in terms of usage, which makes that a lot easier. And getting that same level of like safety for smaller companies is really hard. You end up having to negotiate individual enterprise agreements, etc. So it becomes very complicated. And luckily, I don't have to deal with that. Thank the Lord. So that's one aspect that is made a lot easier by that platform. However, a lot of the work within AI that you do is sort of art of the possible stuff, right? It is how far can we push this thing as fast as possible? And to do that, you're using whatever the latest model that you can possibly get your little fingers on is like, and sometimes they come from China and sometimes they come from like, they're like open source models that have clearly been trained on Disney's entire portfolio or whatever that is. And that stuff is not work that we could or would ever sell. But it's very important to demonstrate where the front is to then figure out, right, like 3 steps behind that, this is what we can really safely deliver for people. And then in terms of being behind creative, but like being between creative and production, it's a very, very complicated thing because they're in two entirely different worlds. It's very like analogous to how architects and engineers work together. And you've got architects who have a vision and engineers who have to build that building. Or the language that I usually use to talk about it is like artists and artisans. Right. And you've got artists whose job it is to go from 0 to something. So 0 to 1, like here's something entirely new that didn't exist before. And it's a very personal thing. And it's something that like we all have within us, the artistry part. And then the other half is artisan. So that is like from 1 to 10. And that's a learned craft. And the world of production is very artisan. And the world of creative is very artist, perhaps unsurprisingly. So there's two very different mindsets. And in the world we're in, we have to think about both of them. So the process we've built is called RTC, or real-time creative. And it has an entirely new setup. It's designed to work with existing capabilities or disciplines as far as possible. So we don't have to completely invent new roles. But what it allows us to do is say, like, I think you reached out after Beamer. You may have seen the Moodling stuff. That was an example of like RTC and this new process.
In the realm of mellow, tranquility reigns. Concerns float away like feathers. In Zingy's land, energy is high. It's go time all the time. Thinkle's world is for brainwaves and breakthroughs. Pure focus, zero fuzz. Confidence is king and vibes are on flee. One gummy. One vibe. Moodlings. Chew your mood.
But we take traditional creatives, we train them in a new way of working, and then we work in a way which is super open and super collaborative. So we're all in one big Figma board, FigJam board, and we run everything in parallel. And the beautiful thing about AI, particularly when you're talking about not just like image generation, but video generation and text as well, is with those different mediums, you can take any single component of a thing. So you've got a video, you can take the color palette, you can take the, the filter, or quote unquote, the look, the LUT, the whatever. You can take the composition, you can take the pacing, you can take the rhythm of the edit, you can take any of those elements or any of the brand elements. You can take like fonts out, but you can also take the tone, you can take the humor, and you can ask for any of those single components from one entity of the brand and another entity of the brand and resynthesize those. So we had to build a process that would allow that to happen. And then it's just being artisans in the room with artists. So it's real time and collaborative. So you've not only got creators, but then you've also got designers, DOPs, whatever it is, who are working to iterate on the stuff live on top of the ideas that come out. And then you also have to then retrain everyone to know, right, we're all on a level pegging. It's very flat. It's very even, apart from the director. And because someone has to make decisions at some point, but it's very much an open and free thing, and that it's not just a linear process. As stuff gets gently more crafted and artisans work on artists' ideas and think that's like Michelangelo and all this, and sculptors working on a piece of marble, it may be that one of those sculptors figures out a way to make a new skin texture while they're doing it. And, that would be, back in that day, that would be, well, no, match to the rest of this. We're doing a direct thing. But in the world of AI, you go, oh, that's nice. And then you just take that and you ripple it back through everything. So everything can get made better by every part of the process, which makes it faster and also keeps the environment really creative. And I will shut up in 1 second, but the last thing I'll say is, I come from a shoot background. I work constantly with, my partner, and everything that we do is a producer called Shah, and who's an absolutely incredible shoot producer. And what we wanted to build when we made this thing was something that worked like a creative session, but felt like a shoot. So you've got crew on set with different tasks and different skill sets that all feed in together. It's done live. It's a real creative thing. And that feels exciting to creatives and nice to creatives, because a lot of what you can do with AI just feels like death. It feels like I'm sitting here and I'm a prompt monkey and I'm on iteration 900 and it's not quite what I want. And am I just going to give up on my taste to accept this thing? So this was a way as well, from a personal standpoint, that we could build something that actually felt genuinely creative and genuinely good.
I guess, I'm also really curious, because you've kind of touched on it a little bit, but maybe let's explore a bit more detail, how the process has changed, when you started adopting the AI tools, for example, what you're doing with sort of RTC, is how different is that to sort of traditional workflows in the past? And I guess, where do you see the biggest time savings and cost savings, etc., coming from?
The major difference is that there's no handoff between phases. So in a traditional process, you would go very much from strategy, and that would be, you'd receive a brief, it would go through brand strategy or social strategy, whatever form of strategy the brief requires. Then it would come into a creative phase with multiple creative sections. Then from there, once that's delivered, and what I'm talking about here are really big stuff. So I'm talking about, at least a few 100,000 up to over 1 million, up to several million for it to be done this properly. But from that creative phase, you then go, right, client chooses a route, you then triple bid it to different production companies to make a hero asset. You'd hand from creative to production, then make that hero asset. Then you go from production into post-production and finishing and craft, and you finish that asset, and then you go into versioning or adaptation, and you make all of the digital variants of that asset all the way through. And the overall process can take 2 to 3 months if it's fast, for a single TVC, and that's before adaptation and versioning afterwards. Whereas what we're talking about is a process that can build an entire brand within 2 to 3 days with all of those same assets. So it's a really, really substantially different thing. Now, again, we have the advantage of the platform of Pencil, so we can then plug those assets into Pencil, and that's what pushes it live. So that makes it all faster. And we would very rarely ever actually do it in 2 to 3 days. 2 to 3 weeks is way more realistic, because we would have client check-ins and iterations. And the major difference between it is that, as I said, it's completely non-linear. You'll build everything at once. And what that means is, rather in a traditional process, you would build 2 to 3 routes, and then you present those ideas to clients to see, and then you develop from there. With this, you build the whole goddamn thing, and you build it so fast that if the client doesn't want the whole goddamn thing, you throw that away and you build the whole goddamn thing again. And that ends up with a really monolithic, really singular form of creative that doesn't have the death by committee and iterations that happens with the traditional process. It can be really single-minded, and at the same time, really, really fast.
And maybe can you give some advice to those who are transitioning right now from even film industry, or some artists? Because the strikes was going on since 2023 with writers, actors, game industry even. So how to move even from this state of fear when you can't actually you're just putting the boundary and just no, I'm not touching any AI. So it's using it and actually kind of combining it with your normal day flow.
Yeah, I guess what I'd say would be, I've been there. That's where I come from, right? And I was earning full-time salary as a cinematographer. That's what I did, and it's what I love. So I get it. And I had that horror show, and I've had the era of this is unhuman. like this is wrong. And I've had the era of creativity is such a fundamentally human thing. Like, how could we allow anything else to do it? And I've had the era where I go, fine, I've managed to transition, but for the generation coming up, you know, in that artist and artisan paradigm, or sort of form paradigm's a bit dramatic, you know, structure, framework, it's really scary because so often the way into the creative industry is through craft, through artisanal craft. So you learn a medium, you learn filmmaking, you learn, or you don't even learn filmmaking. You learn to be a camera assistant, and then you learn camera operation, and then you learn, you know, to be a DOP, and then maybe well, most people stop at DOP. Fine, it's the route into the industry, and that route is now gone because, you know, what AI has replaced is artisanal skill. But what it hasn't replaced is artists' skill. It hasn't replaced human vision, and it hasn't replaced human ideas. And it will make a hell of a lot of stuff soon that can do that as well. And it will be able to write feature-length films. It can't yet. And it will be able to write really compelling poetry. Can't quite yet, unless you work at it for a while. But it will be able to do all of that as well. So that leads me on to the second thing I'd say, which is it's coming. That is going to happen. It is, you know, if you work with it day in and day out, it is so impressive. It is so crazy what it can achieve. It's so clear what is lacking. And if what is lacking is clear, then you know innovation is going to come and fill up that hole soon. Like, that change really very much is coming, which then leads on to sort of the third thing, which is slipping my mind, but it's going to come back in a second. That's it, which is it's coming for everyone. It's a rising water level, right? And what we will see is that the quality of stuff goes up. Like, if you're a tiny little brand working out of your kitchen, you're going to have visuals that look exactly the same as the world's biggest brands, because why wouldn't you, you know? But then that leads on to the next thing, which is ultimately, and I am very much left wing and market economics and all of that stuff I would normally throw out the window. But what I will say is creativity is very much a market. It's very much a competitive space. And so if you have a rising water level like this, there's still the area in which you can float, and there's still good and there's still bad. And that never changes. Like, people always make a choice as to what they'll consume or what they won't. Yes, there's that like algorithmic idiocy thing where we no longer want to choose what we watch. We want to scroll and find something we watch. Sure. But that's also a form of competition. And so that competition, it's gross to talk about competition in the world of creativity, but that is where we will all exist and what we will all express ourselves in. So focus on your artist, not your artisan. Focus on the things that you say, the way that your experience can be expressed and can like deliver novelty and interest. That's the valuable part in the world of AI. Work on the artisanal skills. Just use it. Just sit down and use it for something. And when I say use it, I use Pencil if you've got access to it. Use Krea is another brilliant one, which is really good. Use ChatGPT and generate images in there. Just use it. Try it. It's so fun, right? It's really, really playful. It's really nice. And the thing that's terrifying, which is I'm an artisan. I've developed the skill set to allow myself to be allowed to express myself in this way. For me, that was film. I've learned the craft that allows me to express myself in that film. I no longer have that protection. I no longer have the really cynical little things that come with that. Like, if I was doing a shoot, if I was doing freelance photography, I'd know that the difference between a client going, oh, and wow, was I shot with a shallow depth of field and I put the light behind the people so it was backlit. And those two things, which are really fucking basic, are the initial difference when you're first starting out between like, oh, and ah. And they're a safety blanket, because then I don't need to rely on my own creativity to make something that goes, wow. I can rely on these signposts to people that this is good. That's going away now. That's gone. We can no longer hide behind those elements of craft in that way. Now, craft is still very important. All of the processes we have these large finishing stages where we take it from good to great with grading, with edit, with sound, with all of those things that come. But as individuals, we no longer get the safety of our medium giving us a sense of mystique. Now it's laid bare, which is really scary, but also great, because if you aren't someone who knows a craft, but you've still got an amazing vision, go for it. It's it's much more open now, which is a really nice thing. Those are all. Sorry, lots of tangled thoughts in there, but
No, that's great. I think that's, gives us it's great advice for people who's kind of looking to get in the field. And, especially right now, it's so hard to, I guess, just keep up and make a decision based on like what's really happening out there. But yeah, actually, so on that note, I'd like to ask for your what is your hopes and predictions like for the future of AI, especially, and its impact on sort of the creative marketing field? What are you looking forward to and hope to happen?
I mean, the honest answer is I have no idea what will come, like, at all. I have lots of ideas, but I have no idea which one of those ideas is the right one. And I don't think anyone who works with it day in, day out really can claim to know, because it's so fast and things happen that you just didn't even realize were like a possibility. Something people have spoken about for ages is Gaussian splatting. It's a really fun model that allows you to put in a video of a scene, and then it turns it into a 3D scene, put a 3D point cloud. So you can then you could walk around with your phone and film your room and put it in, and it comes out as a 3D point cloud, which is amazing, right? And that's been around for a while. And then this model came out like a week ago or 2 weeks ago, which would allow you to do that, but with video. So you sit down and you film an interview or whatever, you film this, and then you get a fully 3D render of me sat here through this AI model, and you can reframe it and whatever, which is like, but then also you think about, right, what could you actually use that for? Well, the biggest problems in AI film at the moment is character consistency with dialogue. That's the current frontier thing. And character consistency is important scene to scene, but it's also important shot to shot. And lo and behold, if you take that, you film a real scene of real actors just in a bedroom or whatever, you can get all of your camera angles from that single one shot, and then you use them to drive instances of like, runway references to turn it into that new look. Oh, it's a medieval town or whatever. And then you use the initial videos and those angles to then drive that scene. Suddenly you've got perfect consistency in a scene. You can shoot it and choose your shots like a director would want to. And you can also have performances like actors want to. So there are, it's not only that individual bits of tech are doing these mind-blowing things, but it's like, if you're in it, the places to synthesize between these things, it's huge, and there's so much excitement there. So yeah, I think things are really, really, really gonna change. I think with creativity, and especially in particular, things are going to be really, really quite different. And we, as in our generation, are the ones that have grown up with the old way, the traditional way, and now we're transitioning into AI, which gives us a certain set of training and skills, backgrounds, which are quite valuable in that. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens with the generation below, who don't need to go through any of that, to see what happens to creativity with them, like how it's going to answer the question of how much of creativity is craft and how much of it is newness. That'll be clear as day in a few years' time. But it's one of those things where the distance from I know nothing about this to I am leading this is like 2 months of hard work, right? If you really focus on it. And then you can be up at the forefront of making things as soon as it comes out. Sam Altman said something really valuable like a year ago, which was about how do you stay as a startup, how do you stay ahead of AI? And you're saying there are two strategies. There is, I'm going to take the models as they exist. I'm going to push them to do something they can't already do and get newness there, and there will be my value. And then there are the people who go, I'm going to come up with an idea that is built upon one of the existing models. I'm not going to touch the model. I'm just going to run it through that. And when you've got like, 6 major model providers or something like that, that's how many there are, and each of them are putting billions in. You've got Meta offering was it a 9-figure contract to engineers to work on AI? Like just going, we want the best, we will pay you tens or hundreds of millions. That amount of money is going into these 6 core models. If you're building something in it, if you're working with creative, don't get creative with the things that you build. There's no need to try and make a model that's better than one of them. Just build, like Sam said, second category there, upon what exists and let the rising water level lift you up. You don't want to have to rebuild your whole company every time a new iteration of ChatGPT comes out. Let that buoy you up as well. And then you're at the cutting edge of it. I think that's it all, folks.
Nice. All right. So I'd like to leave the last minute for maybe yourself for any last words, or like if people are really interested in sort of finding out what you get up to and maybe they want to reach out, ask a few more questions, like where can they find you and how can they reach out?
Yeah, you can find me on probably LinkedIn is the social media I use for this sort of stuff. My name is Lucas Stanley, Senior AI Creative, and you should be able to find me from that. And yeah, really do reach out, any messages, anything to talk about. I'm here. I love chatting. And yeah, I think that's all. Last thing I'd say is just, like I said in the middle, just try it, play with it. It's on a big scale, it's terrifying and and with people are answering those questions. On a small scale, it's so cool, man. It's so cool.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining us today.
No worries. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.